And so my purpose and my passion is to bring humanity in the heart back into the workplace so that we can create places that are filled with psychological and physical safety, as we just talked about, filled with belonging, and filled with bravery. I want people to thrive, and I think you do too. I want to thrive. You want to thrive.
You could have ended up being a bus, a tree. You're a student. All you want to do is read and consume and ponder and make pretend and talk about how you're gonna. Fuck you're gonna. Go do it. It took me a long time to hire the person to really run our HR. Her name is Claude Silver. She's our Chief Heart Officer. She, on the org chart, sits ahead of my COO and my CFO. She's the second most important person in my company. She leads with her heart.
People need people, and then people need people that listen, and then people need people that listen and do something.
I believe in people, and I see the good in the everyday. I build teams rooted in a generosity of spirit and a belief in possibility. I unlock people so that they can become their own champions, and I celebrate the little as well as the big victories.
That's the video, now the real thing. Would you please give it up for Claude Silver, Chief Heart Officer of VaynerMedia. Claude, welcome.
Thank you, Nigel.
Welcome.
Thank you. Amazing. Thank you so much. It's awesome to be here. Raise a hand of who knows Gary Vaynerchuk. Anyone that knows who he is? Okay, few people. He's an unreasonable boss that I actually love spending time with. And he is the chairman and founder of VaynerMedia, which is a global digital advertising agency based in America, but we have offices in Singapore and London. So I get the great privilege of speaking to you about common sense themes and things, and I have a feeling that most of you will be nodding your head and maybe taking some photos of some pretty slides, but I have a feeling I'm speaking right to you. So, Chief Heart Officer. Why that? Well, as Nigel said, heart is the central operating system of any human being. All of us have hearts. And human beings are the central operating system of any company, even the companies that are creating the machines today. Everyone we know in this room and those people that we manage and we lead has potential just waiting inside of them for us to help bring them out. Uncork them, unlock them, show them the way, give them the reins, give them the autonomy. It does start with us. It starts with us in this room, getting into that mindset that we as HR professionals, and I say HR in quotes because, by the way, I don't really know what HR is. I am in HR, but I believe it's all about people and experience. But we as the leaders of HR and the leaders of businesses and CEOs and whatnot, it's our responsibility to turn them into heroes. We are the coaches and the Sherpas and the guides, and they are the heroes. So I put this quote up here because I think most of us know that finding something to believe in that is bigger than ourselves, finding a purpose is really what life is all about, whether or not that's your children, a charity, changing the world. Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, talked quite a bit about this. Helen Keller talks quite a bit about this, Dostoevsky. And so I just want to give you a little bit of a background of me. I don't come from this world of HR. I was always told I was an HR person's dream, which I thought was a compliment until I really got into HR. So, anyone in this room like me, dyslexic? Few people. Okay. So I'm dyslexic. I'm proud of it now. Wasn't proud of it as a kid. And I really, really struggled in school to read and to really understand spatial relationships. But I was excellent at reading people. I was excellent at coming up with patterns. Today I can walk into a restaurant or walk into a room and I can identify what's going on in that ecosystem. That comes really easily to me. Math didn't come easily to me. Spelling didn't come easily to me. And I wanted to make sure, as I went into the working world, that I would never feel like I didn't belong. Because it's really easy to feel like you don't belong. We all have othering. We all feel other at some point in our day, if not our life. And so for me, becoming I studied psychology. I should let you know. I was going to get my master's in psychotherapy. And in 1998, I was in San Francisco, and I took a left turn somewhere, and I ended up in this wide world of comms and communication and marketing. I never, ever intended to be in the world of advertising. I really thought I would be helping people in a psychotherapeutic modality way. However, I entered into this world of digital transformation. 1998, there was no Facebook, there was no Google. And away I went, and I had a really, really wonderful, wonderful career in advertising. I worked on major brands that you would walk into Boots, or you'd walk into your pharmacy, or Walgreens in America, and you would see most of the brands or the aisles I worked on. I was always a mentor. I was always that person that people kind of gravitated towards. And again, probably because I have a good knack for people. But I was really clear that my purpose, while I was going to be selling different things in advertising world, was going to be really helping people belong, making space for them, making sure that no one felt other, at least in my world. And so my purpose and my passion is to bring humanity in the heart back into the workplace, so that we can create places that are filled with psychological and physical safety, as we just talked about, filled with belonging, and filled with bravery. I want people to thrive, and I think you do too. I want to thrive, you want to thrive. And so how I go about doing that is actually through EQ, emotional intelligence, not IQ. Perhaps it's the road less traveled, but for me, that is what comes naturally to me. So I met this phenomenal guy, unreasonable boss, Gary Vaynerchuk, when I was living in London, and I was running strategy for a very large advertising agency. And we met. I had been following him for a while. It's hard. Once you kind of get a glimpse of him, or you follow him on LinkedIn, or you follow him on Twitter, you're kind of hooked. It's a curse. It's a good thing. I don't really know. You tell me later on what you think. But once you follow him on LinkedIn, I'm just going to tell you right now, you'll never not see him. So that's a warning. But he's full of gifts. So he said to me when I joined in May of 2014, back in New York, he said he wanted to create the single greatest human organization in the world. And he really means that. And when I met him, it was really, really true, as another dyslexic in the room, that we both had this uncanny belief in human beings, that we were obsessed with creating safe spaces, that we were obsessed with doing the right thing and kindness and bringing that into workplaces. So he said to me one day, "You are going to be Chief Heart Officer." Now, I had already worked there for 18 months as a strategist. I was actually the first senior vice president that he hired. I was a woman, big deal, in kind of a bro culture at that point. And at some point he said to me, "You know what, I want you to be the Chief Heart Officer. You really understand me, you can scale me." We were 400 people at that time. And so I said to him, "That's really cool, I'm honored, it's who I am, I've always been this person, I've always had this belief in humans. I want to be a coach, I want to be a Sherpa, I want to make sure that no one feels left out, that we bring people in. All right, cool, what's my measure of success?" I said this to him over breakfast. "How do we know if I'm successful?" And he said the following: "You will infuse empathy throughout the organization and touch every single employee." At that point, it was about 600 people. I now know that I am in HR, that I actually need to replace the word touch with impact, because we don't touch. So this is my job description. I said, cool, all right, that's great. I had to figure out pretty quickly, this is almost 4 years ago now, I had to figure out pretty quickly how I was going to go do this, how I was going to infuse empathy throughout the entire organization and impact the entire population. And so I did what came naturally to me, concentrating on people and the experience that they have in the workplace. By the way, the experience they have in the workplace doesn't just start when they open the door or press the elevator button at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning. It actually starts because there is a work-life blend. We've talked about work-life balance. I believe it's a blend or a harmony. When they get out of bed in the morning and they first put their feet on the ground, our people, our employees are dealing with a myriad of things. They could have a family member in the hospital. They could go walk the dog. They could go to the gym. They have to get the kids out of the house and off to school. And then they come in, and then they start their day. So for me, concentrating on people in the experience isn't just about being there for 9 to 5, 9 to 6 in the afternoon and the evening. It's really looking at the entire experience of our employees. And so I decided that with my EQ skills, I would concentrate on the only thing that mattered, which is really the experience that they are having. We all know that human beings are wired to connect. We're all wired to belong. This has been since the dawn of time. This is no empirical, wow, aha. We're all wired to be in community. What's really, really important to get is that in the workplace, it's all about relationships and all about people. Skills, while incredibly important, are commoditized. So again, I work in advertising. If I was in London today, or if I was in New York today, and I needed to find 5 copywriters, or even 5 comedic copywriters, I could do that. The skills are pretty commoditized, unless you're really a specialist. But it is the people that matter. And today, in the workplace, more than ever, we are in relationships with 4 generations. 4 generations of people are in the workplace today, especially at VaynerMedia, where we have 18, 19-year-olds, Gen Zs. We have the millennials, which we'll talk a lot about. We have Gen Xers like myself, and we have boomers. So the relational fluency that we are teaching, showing by example, coaching, is more important than ever, because there are different languages and there are different ways of being that all 4 of these populations have been brought up with and are learning. What we do know is that in the past, right, jobs were very physical, and they still are physical to some extent. Jobs were about muscle, whether or not you were putting horseshoes on a horse, putting tires on a car, building a house. Then we went into the information age, which we're very much still in, obviously. But I really believe that we are moving into this age of heart, of empathy, of intuition, where we are talking about well-being at work, where we are talking about bringing meditation into work, where there are places that have psychotherapists in the workplace, where we have a wellness room. Things that matter to us as human beings are now being brought into the workplace because of this meld, this work-life meld that's happening. Oops, sorry, I didn't press that slide. There we go. So my belief is, while we're in the information age, we are moving into this age of heart. And as I say, tomorrow is here. So, we used to talk about emotions in the workplace and kind of like stay away, especially in my generation. Certainly no one really ever asked me how I was doing, how I like to be managed. Did I understand what my roles and responsibilities are? Now we know, though, that as we bring our whole selves to work, or our best selves, sometimes I'm iterating between the two, whole or best, we now know that high performance and these emotional qualities are actually being linked to high performance here. So being able to be generous and gracious, having emotional courage, bringing compassion and kindness into the workplace, these are now linked with being high performers. It's not just based on meritocracy. It's not just based on how many sales you get. Now, I work in a kind of utopic place, and I understand that. I work for a boss that created a job called Chief Heart Officer to run HR. And so my life is a little bit different than everyone else's life, and I really do get that, and I respect that. But the whole point of this conversation and the point of the conversation I'll have later and any time is that there is no reason that you cannot bring these thoughts and points of view into your workplace today. Because culture change takes place in the fringes. It's never just taken place right at the center, at the epicenter of the world. So to change your culture, it just takes more than one person to start a groundswell. We'll get into that in a second. But I love this thought that high performance is now linked to bringing yourself out into the workplace. So culture is a business issue. It's not just an HR issue. It just doesn't belong in the back office there where HR sometimes still is. It's everyone's responsibility to cultivate. In fact, the root of the word culture comes from the Latin word, and French word actually, called cultura, which is the cultivation of the soul. So I spent a lot of time in San Francisco, about 18 years, and after the dot-com bust, the first one, I founded a surfing company. And I would spend about 275 days in the cold Pacific Ocean. I had a really killer tan, kind of the neck up, wrist down, because obviously it's freezing and you wore a thick wetsuit. So I'm a little bit of a hippy-dippy, I get that, for sure. But I really, truly believe that through osmosis and through opening yourself up and allowing relationships to happen, we can create workplaces that are filled with more soul. Back to cultura, back to culture, back to the cultivation. Now, Gary Vaynerchuk blessed our culture a long time ago. We're 10 and a half years old. So he blessed it a long time ago, and he said, we are going to be a people-first culture. Cool. It takes the entire population to make sure that we are humming together. It's not just me, it's not just Gary, it's not just my team. Every single person from the ground up and the sides contribute to this culture. And the way I think about culture, quite frankly, is like a soup, a minestrone soup, let's just say. And you need all different types of ingredients. If you leave the oregano out of that soup, it's not going to taste great. If you leave the bay leaf out of that soup, it's not going to taste great. We need every single person to bring themselves into the workplace. And that is actually what is creating the happy culture that we have at VaynerMedia, the culture of curiosity and bravery, creativity. So this is from Gallup a few years ago, but what we do know is the ROI of happy cultures is pretty positive. So more creativity, more innovation, less turnover, less absenteeism. Still, we do have a problem with engagement, especially in the United States, as we've already talked about today. We do have a problem with the lack of engagement, and that's why I believe these common sense things that we're talking about today in this conference especially is so important to change those ratios. And the way we change those ratios, I believe, is by being more authentic and making sure that we are turning people into champions and teaching them to turn other people into champions. And in turn, we feel good. It's all karma. That's all good vibes. So let's talk a little bit about creating culture and creating cultures of creativity and belonging and bravery. Okay, we've already done this with Nigel once this morning, but please turn to your right or left or right behind you and either high five your neighbor or shake hands. Amazing. I love it. Every time I do that, every time I suggest that, people laugh. It's really funny how we giggle like when we touch one another and we're like, oh my God, it's like, I don't know why, but there's always a laugh in the room. So you've just done a ritual. You've just created a ritual. Connection is a ritual. We do it constantly in our homes, in our churches, in our synagogues, in our teams. But we are creating connection constantly, every single day when we shake hands with someone, which we do over and over and over again. And what does shaking hands or high-fiving, what does shaking hands actually say to that person? Anyone have an idea? One more time. I connect with you. You're safe with me. I got you. Right now, you and I are together. It's all about connection, and it's all about creating safety. In the olden days, something I read about that happened, I guess one of the examples of a handshake was that when two men were shaking hands, it showed that I didn't have a gun in my hand, so that you were safe. We are always, always creating these rituals in workplaces. And so just have a think about what type of rituals you're creating in your own teams, and what rituals are you creating within the culture of the community. Because these are things, culture is a vibe. I mean, culture are the norms that communities do together. So just think about that. So what you also just did with one another is you gave each other your attention, just like you're giving me your attention. You gave one another attention by giving a high five or shaking hands. And that's actually where the laughter comes in, because that shaking hands, high five, laughter is unlocking serotonin in our brains. When we unlock the serotonin in our brains, the cortisol levels decrease. Cortisol brings us a lot of anxiety. And we're going into work these days with a lot of anxiety. And so the more we can bring connection and the idea and the feeling and the vibe of psychological and physical safety into our workplaces, our people will feel happier. That level of cortisol will go down. And when that goes down, we are higher performers. It's scientifically evidenced. Now, the grandmother of attention is generosity. Being generous with your time, being generous with your energy, being generous with your heart. And that unlocks oxytocin, which is the hugging drug, which we get from a lot of our babies and dogs and all kinds of good things. I have a 1-year-old, so I get it all day long. And it feels incredible. So just think about this. When you give someone your time, what's actually happening in that exchange? And what I didn't mention is when Gary said to me that my job description was to infuse empathy throughout the entire organization, okay, this is some of the ways I do that. But touch, impact 800 people, how do I do that? I'm in one-on-ones all day long, 15 minutes. Either you have proactively sought me out because you want to talk about something, you want some coaching, you want to do a whiteboard session that I call, what I call them. You want to talk about the raise that you didn't get or the feedback your manager gave you. Or I am proactively reaching out to you because you've been there for 90 days or 6 months and I haven't met you. I just want to know how you're doing. I heard in the wind, a whisper in the wind that you're really unhappy. I heard a whisper in the wind that your manager is really unhappy with you. So I'm constantly in conversations with people, holding space and listening to them, giving and receiving attention. So culture is absolutely invisible to the eye, right? We just talked about it. It's a vibe, it's a texture. I really think about a really, really, really windy day. When the wind is blowing and you're getting stuff in your eyes and your contact lenses and your hair's a mess, that is a shitty culture. That, to me, is exactly what a toxic culture feels like. I just want to get out of it. But a culture that I want to be in has laughter. It has people high-fiving. I walk through the kitchen and I can hear people clanking their forks and their knives together. That is when I know things are happening. A friendly culture. And culture really exists in the hearts and minds of those of us that are creating it every single day. And creating a culture of belonging does require people to bring their authentic self to work. And in order to do that, they have to feel safe. I continually will go back to this idea of safety, because without safety, it's almost impossible to then have authentic connection with one another, because I'm just guarded. I just have armor up. Did anyone see the Brene Brown? Anyone know who Brene Brown is or who doesn't know who Brene Brown is? Cool. Brene Brown is a professor at the University of Texas, and she has one of the top 5 most watched TED Talks on vulnerability and shame. And she also has a Netflix special out. So I'm just doing a little plug for Brene. Anyway, in the Netflix special, she says the following. True belonging doesn't require you to change who you are. It just requires you to be who you are. It just requires you to be who you are. In today's day and age, especially, I can only speak for what I'm doing and for the people I speak to that are running large departments or large companies, diversity is more important than ever. Diversity, race, ethnicity, sexuality, religious belief, diversity of thinking, diversity of seen and unseen handicaps. So imagine walking into work on your first day, getting off the elevator and walking into work and not seeing anyone like you, how you would feel. You'd probably question why you're there. And then imagine going into work or going into your first meeting and seeing and hearing people that are like you. It would completely change your experience. At VaynerMedia, when I took this role almost 4 years ago, I immediately changed the way we hired. We used to hire for culture fit. I mean, it was 2 brothers that started the company, and then they brought their friends in, and they brought their friends in, and they brought their friends in. So it was a culture of incredible, lovely, sporty, mostly white dudes. They had a lot of commonalities. They liked each other. It was great. They were bros. When I started this role, I immediately changed it to skill set, fit, and culture addition. The culture addition allowed me, just with those 2 words, to start hiring for diversity. And I didn't just mean the color of skin. I did mean diversity of thinking, curiosity, creativity, someone that's going to be unreasonable and show us a different way of thinking. Skill set fit, even though I did say skills are commoditized, we still need to have specialists in our organizations. So I still need to find data engineers. But they don't need to be or look exactly like me or like you. We want them to bring themselves to work, and whether or not basically they like Pearl Jam or they like classical Yo-Yo Ma, it doesn't matter. What matters is they are going to add to our culture. Culture, skill set fit, and culture addition. So think about this for a second. We in this room, we as human beings have so much power. We have enormous amounts of power to influence people. And the way we influence people can be either positive or negative. Positive obviously adds to the culture, and negative actually takes away and depletes the culture. So, the way you see people, just think about this for your own self. The way you see people is actually how you're going to treat that person, whether or not that's your own unconscious bias kicking in, which we all have. We're all working on, right? Or it just so happens that they are listening to Pearl Jam and you love Pearl Jam, so immediately they're going to be my friend. But as we treat people, the way we treat people is actually what they will become. So now, pause with me for 1 second. Have you ever been on a conference call and there's a client on the phone and you're sitting around a bunch of people and you're having a meeting and you have the phone in the center of the room, and the client, or maybe it's even your boss on the phone, says something, and one person rolls their eyes. Oh my God, she said it again. God, what a dummy. Well, imagine you're new in that meeting. You're a new employee and you're in that meeting and you just saw me roll my eyes. I have so much power to influence you. I've just with the roll of my eyes or whatever it is I've said, in some kind of toxic way, influenced you. Imagine if we just flipped that and we saw each other as magnificent, as the magnificent people that we are, as doing our best, as trying to champion our own lives, much less champion other people's lives. So the way you see people is the way you treat them, and the way you treat them is what they become. Cool. So these next 3 slides are going to be things you know, and I'm sure you're going to nod your heads because you're in this working world with me. The things that are going to weaken a heart-based culture are things like public humiliation, you're on or off the island, favoritism, negative bias, cynicism, competition in a toxic way, secrecy, a lot of back office, water cooler chats, not letting you in, withholding information, micromanaging, anything fear-related. It's going to weaken the culture. But things that are going to promote a culture of belonging, again, things you all know, inclusivity, equality, give me a sense of purpose, compassion, performance, autonomy, respect, transparency, communication, attention and accessibility. Both Gary, myself, and all senior leaders are accessible and open door policy and 24/7. 24/7. You can text me, you can Slack me, you can do whatever and say you want to have 15 minutes with me, a half an hour with me, you got that. I am working for you. We, not I. I often say our culture is we, not I. We do our best to remove the ego. We are teaching necessary life skills and hard skills. So I don't use the word soft skills because for a person like me, that is more EQ heavy. That would just be demeaning to me and everyone else like me. But I like the idea of necessary life skills. So Jordan just had this slide up as well. But as I'm listening to all of these people, mostly millennials, who are wonderful and they are changing this world, 1,000%, I'm listening to what their needs are. By the way, as a Gen Xer, I had these same needs, just no one asked me, and I didn't feel comfortable talking about it, right? No one really asked me if I was proud of where I worked. What I was told is I was an HR person's dream. What that HR person didn't know is that it took me almost 30 minutes to write an email because my spelling and my grammar was so poor that I actually needed help. It wasn't until I became a leader that I found Grammarly and started to use that, so now I can write emails in 3 seconds or less, which may or not be good, I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, we all need to be talked to and touched and listened to. And so these are a lot of the emotional needs in the workplace. Okay, you got that. So kind of to wrap up some of what I was saying and things that I'm looking at every single day in these one-on-ones, as I'm talking to Bob or Sarah or Monica or Robert, I'm asking them questions to find out how they're doing in this organization. Am I fulfilling the promise that I gave them when they started to work with us? And the promise was, we are going to give you at-bats, opportunity, growth, and development. We are going to make you proud that you work here. We are going to stretch you, and you're going to give us about 40 to 50 hours of your time. So I'm finding out with my own questioning, my own inquiry, are they feeling safe? Do they feel a sense of belonging? Are they rooted? Are they grounded? Are they connecting? Have they made friends? We just saw that slide. Do they know what's expected of them? Do they feel like they matter? Or are they replaceable? Mattering is very, very important. It's a way of recognizing someone, but do I feel like you need me? Do I have a purpose? Am I finding my purpose? Do I know what the team's purpose is? Do I know what the company's purpose and vision is? Am I achieving anything? Did my tweet for Budweiser beer get over, thousands of hits? Is it something I want to share with my mom or my dad? Am I happy? Am I fulfilled? And am I having to work hard? I want to sweat at work. I want to put some muscle into it. Gary might say hustle. I don't say hustle. I say hard work. There's a lot of things that we want for free. We want free trips to Tahiti and free whatevers. But at work, we actually want to grind a bit. We want to feel like we left work and we squeezed that orange as hard as we could. So Darwin actually said it is the species that is the most responsive to change that is the one that will survive. And in this working world today, where we need a lot of grit and resilience because things are changing at the top of, at the click of a hand, we need to make sure that we are up for the challenge, that we and our group of people that we work with are resilient and have the muscles to get through that next pitch, to get through that next campaign that we're doing, the last stretch of 2019. And I fundamentally believe that creating teams, high-performing teams that are rooted in empathy, it takes connection. We've talked a lot about that, how to get to connection. It takes empathy. It takes trust. I believe that those things lead to accountability, autonomy, loyalty, longevity. So we have people who are 10 and a half years old. We still have employee 1, 2, and 3 still there. A group of us are still employee. We've been there for about 7 to 4 years. So we have a shorthand with one another. That's the longevity. And I believe if you do this, and resilience, if you do that right, connection, trust, empathy, accountability, resilience, longevity, you get to speed. And speed is a phenomenal KPI for any of us today, especially in a high-growth, demanding workplace and market. So here's some quick takeaways that we can talk about later anytime that you want, but some micro steps to increase belonging at work. And these are just quick jot downs. Look at your recruiting practices. Make sure that you're looking for diversity of thinking as well as holistic diversity. Transparent communication at the top. Having all hands really helps. Having group meetings really helps. Having Q&A really, really helps. We have a 4-day orientation program where we put every single new joiner in that orientation. Last week we had 2 C-suite people start, and they were in the same exact orientation that all of the new people were in, whether or not you were a media analyst, a copywriter, a creative director. And what that did immediately is it A, connects people, B, flattens the organization. You, a copywriter just out of school, second job maybe, are sitting with the chief strategy officer. That's pretty cool. I've just made friends with you. Culture champions. I can't do this job alone. I can't scale Gary. I need people to scale me. We all need to create and cultivate this culture. So who are the culture champions that you believe have the company's best interest at heart? Who are those other empaths? Who are those other people that are generous with their spirit and want to take someone for a coffee, or want to check out why that person was just crying, or want to congratulate and make a party for the person that just was engaged? I call them culture champions, and you know who they are. I used to be a culture champion. I was that person that everyone came to, and so that's why I can identify that. Acts of serendipity, surprise and delight. These are things that really just create good vibes. And obviously walking the walk, having integrity. Micro steps to increasing bravery are very similar. Encourage communication. Create conditions for your team to thrive. Figure out what works best for them. Maybe we opened up an office in New York, a smaller office, and it turns out they didn't have natural light. And we couldn't put natural light in. So we brought in a lot of plants and made an entire wall full of plants. Not the same, but something that showed them that we cared and we heard them. Creating an it's okay to fail culture is super important. Making sure that people know that you failed in your life. Supporting vulnerability, that's what we've been talking a lot about today. Remembering that we are guides. Making sure that there's a great learning and development curriculum that's going on throughout the company. Amplifying and celebrating one another. So this is my ultimate favorite quote from Maya Angelou. I have it 3 different places in my office. And really it's the last portion that is the most important, which is people will always remember how you made them feel. Good, bad, and different. You can't work in an advertising agency and not have Don Draper. So the most important thing is being consistent with everything that we're talking about today. Because again, we can influence people very easily. So consistency is key. Walking the walk is key. And you don't get points for holding back. Thank you very much.